Hey there, Kat Parker here, and we've got a bunch in store for you today. We have a great interview of Mark he did with a very popular YouTube channel. It's called Living Free in Tennessee, and it's run by Nicole Sauce. And they met each other about 15 years ago. Now, once Liberty Oak Oasis is up and running, they're only going to be about 25 minutes apart. We have the link in our description for you to subscribe to Living Free in Tennessee. And speaking about subscribing, y'all, our data shows us that only 65% of you watching are actually subscribed to the channel. So what you're going to want to do is hit that subscribe button. It really helps because it pushes us forward in the YouTube algorithm and it promotes us. And when you type in the search bar Liberty Oak Oasis, it puts us up towards the top.
Alrighty, folks, we are live with Mark Johnson from Liberty Oak Oasis. This is an interview show. We will be airing it on the podcast a little later, but I thought you would want to hear this live, and he agreed to come on live. I want to remind you before we jump into introducing Mark, how we do live shows. First of all, if you have a question for Mark or for me or that you want to interject, please kindly, because my eyes aren't what they used to be, put the first couple words in all caps. I will star them and work them in as I can. As long as we have time at the end with Mark, we'll take all of your questions. If we run out of time, I'll see if we can get them on a second time and run through those. The other thing is, if anybody tries to reach out to you on a side channel and it says Living Free in Tennessee and they have my logo and they look like they say, hey, go to the super secret chat, that's not me. I'm never going to do that to you. There's a lot of fraudsters out on YouTube. We haven't had one in about 3 weeks, so it's been pretty lucky. With that, I do want to say, Mark, welcome to the show. Let's start out with, who in the world is Mark Johnson? You might as well tell people how we met. And then how did you end up coming to where you are today? What is your background?
Wow. Okay. So I was born in Louisville, Kentucky in 1971, and then we'll fast forward from there. How about that?
Sounds good.
So originally all my relatives are from Kentucky and Tennessee. And so for a long time, going on 5 or 6 years, knowing that all my relatives are down there, I've been wanting to get back down to Tennessee, and I remarried 5 years ago. Wonderful lady who's a nurse, and she and I had decided that getting down to Tennessee would look different from the life that we're living here in Illinois. And then, of course, when I was I've been in Illinois my whole life, and that's originally how you and I met. Of course, I believe we did a blogging conference in Chicago.
That did happen. I think we met at Liberty on the Rocks too, didn't we?
I thought it was the Sam Adams and Leslie Lynch from Wisconsin.
Oh yeah, I remember.
I think she was there. I don't know if you remember her or not, but anyway, So that's inside baseball. And so basically, I've spent a good majority of the last 10 years involved with something called Celebrate Recovery. Which is helping people deal and face down mental health issues. It's something that my wife has a heart for, as well as a nurse. And we wanted to create a retreat space that would help people in that manner. And then I had that idea long before I knew anything about Airbnb or glamping or anything along those lines. And it just seemed to me that the two ideas, would really merge well together. That we could use one to support the other and vice versa. And then it just became a matter of, where are we going to locate? What's it going to look like? How do you get raw land? How do you develop it? How do you, set the whole thing up from the ground up? I mean, it's quite an endeavor. So basically, when I finally saw the light and realized that Illinois was not turning back, a doubling of the gas tax and making things more and more difficult just to be here, then we decided that we would fast forward our efforts as quickly as possible. So we really started in earnest bearing down on finding land a couple of years ago, and it's now taken a couple of years to find the right spot that we knew would be economically viable, as well as a spot that was affordable and the ability to attract people to the area. So that people would want to come back. So that's a little bit about me, and I've been involved in local politics my whole life, and I'm going to enjoy being able to go to Tennessee and be in a place where I think the way I think is a little bit more respected than in Illinois.
Well, time will tell. You can let us know after you've been here a while. Okay, so let's
I
back
hope
up.
so.
It started with an idea. How many years ago did you have this idea? Like, I want a big piece of land. I want it to be peaceful. I want it to be a place where people can come and recover and heal.
Yeah.
When did you have that idea?
Probably late 2016, early 2017.
Okay.
I knew that my kids were getting older and were getting into the early 20s, and that my responsibilities as a dad was going to continue to decrease. And I knew that at some point that I would want to move closer to my parents. This was before I got remarried. And then I realized that if I was going to move out of state, where would I work? What would I do? And one of the things that came to mind was, because I was a cook in the Army, was I felt that maybe I could go find one of these retreat centers, and I could actually just work at these, work at a retreat center, learn a little bit about how they operate, so on and so forth, learn things from the ground up, and then I could go start one on my own after I got a little bit of an education of being on the inside. So that's how the whole idea started. That was probably 2017. About a year later, I'm remarried, and then of course I have to get up the courage to share with my wife, who's lived her entire life in Illinois, and say, hey, let's turn our whole lives upside down and go run off and do this. And that took a little bit of courage on my part to do that.
Yeah. Okay. So you had the idea in 2017. Tell us, what is the idea and what is the scope of what you want to build?
Well, I'm looking to get at the idea was to get anywhere between 30 and 100 acres, close to a state park or a major place that people are already touristing to, and then build out either. And at the time, I really didn't know about glamping tents, or if you look online, there's a company called Davis Tent Company, so on and so forth. They canvas tents, those sort of things. I was thinking cabins, and then I realized that that's really expensive, like over $500,000 expensive.
So the original idea was 30 to 100 acres and build cabins, and then tap into local recreation.
Yes, correct. And then also have an ability, to tap into a few, because I've been listening to podcasts about mental health and so on. I found some podcasts where mental health was an issue, where they were a nonprofit trying to help veterans, mental health trying to help ministry leaders and pastors and so on and so forth. So I thought, well, I'll just go forward with tapping into these nonprofits and then seeing what I can kind of stir up, and then that started kind of moving things forward.
Okay. That's a pretty big project. So before you found out about glamping, approximately how much money did you think you were going to need to put together to get this done?
Anywhere between, well, I had a financial advisor that was very interested in helping me early on, and he gave me a lot of really good advice and helped me put together some spreadsheets and budgets and so on and so forth. We pretty much continually landed on somewhere between $800,000 and $1 million.
Okay.
Is basically probably what we needed for what the scope of the project was at that time.
Right. And we're going to talk about your journey and how it changed. So I'm trying to, guys, here's my point with me, like, pushing on Mark about this. He had a big, awesome idea. He had a lot of heart in this idea. He was driven to help people. And he took the time to write the idea down and figure out what it would take to do it. And that number is $1 million, maybe a little bit less if he gets lucky. And sometimes when we're standing here looking at $1 million, the first thing we think is, man, I'm never going to get there. I'm never going to get there. But Mark has gotten somewhere. First of all, we'll talk about where you get as we go into this interview. But when you kind of had that all put together and you were looking at the big number going, crumbs, how do I get this done? How did you get over? Because I'm sure did you have doubt for a minute when you saw the number, or never?
Well, I think you're always daunted, you always wonder. But I think what I had going for me is that my father was a small businessman.
Yeah.
I helped my dad run our small business. My dad was a high school dyslexic dropout who was a millionaire by the age of 27.
Yeah.
And by no means was I born with a silver spoon in my mouth, because, my dad worked 50 hours a week to keep that dream alive. For 37 years, he did that.
Yeah.
And so I saw him, take out loans to improve our business over the years, put in gas pumps, put in this, put in deli, so on and so forth. And then secondly, in my life, I've spent 8 years working for a law firm that collected money for insurance companies.
Yeah.
And I was given the task of working the hardest of hard files, where I was working with attorneys and asking attorneys for $400,000 and $500,000 settlements.
Yeah.
And so I got used to large numbers and being comfortable with thinking about large numbers. And so I think I kind of had that advantage going in.
Yeah. Well, and that's an important thing, because what I've noticed is so you went from 0 to hero, 2017 to now you have your land. And you soldiered through, basically. But before you even landed on 2017, everything you've done, from those blogging conferences to working in politics to work experience. I'm sorry, I'm taking a Tylenol, guys, because my root canal has not been done yet. And of course, once I start talking, it starts hurting. So Tactical brought me one. You had all of that experience leading up there. And that's something I think we forget to look at, is we set our goals, we go for our goals, and then everything we've done that we think wasn't worth our time in life, it turns out it really was. And it was giving us the skills we need to get there. So what skills do you think you really, besides not being afraid of big numbers, what other skills did you realize that you had once you kind of started thinking about that?
Well, I don't know if it's a skill. I mean, I've always had an ability to describe big ideas and make people excited about them, I guess. I don't know. I don't know if natural salesman is a skill, or, I mentioned to you before, we started streaming. I spent 3 years in high school as an extemporaneous speaker. So, being able to be confident and talking to people. I would say another skill is not being afraid of anyone who I'm talking to. If it's a banker, or if it's a guy that's got $6 million worth invested in local real estate, and I'm going to his office to talk to him, and he's got the big, huge mahogany desk and the leather chair and stuff. My dad taught me through our grocery store and talking across the counter at a grocery store is that everyone's money's green. Everyone puts their pants on the same. You treat people with respect, they'll treat you with respect, and get used to hearing no. I guess maybe that's another skill is the resistance of not being daunted just because you get 3 or 4 no's in a row. And that I'll kind of weave that in later with, how I ended up getting the land, once we talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one that you developed that you may not realize how well you've honed it is your ability to use digital marketing to get attention, which comes from everything you've done over time. And then knowing that, hey, I can reach out to specialists to help me be even better at this.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important one. Boy, that thing about not being afraid of people is a big one.
Yeah.
I think the biggest emotional overcoming I see people needing to do, besides the I'm not good at get enough narrative they tell themselves, is they see other people who are successful and they're afraid to talk to them. And the best thing you can do when you see somebody who you think is more successful than you, who maybe has some information you could learn from, is ask them. Because usually they're happy to talk to you about that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I took, again, to the financial advisor who'd been doing things, for 25, 30 years, advising business owners, shifting around money, helping people invest in money, so on and so forth. I threw it out to him and I just said, look, this is what I want to do. What are some of the first steps? He gave me those first steps. And then the next thing I knew is just, okay, what am I going to do this week? What am I going to do next week? And just try to come up with, and it's probably in the last 4 years, it's probably been 237 steps. I probably didn't expect that, but there's an old Chinese proverb about that, right? The journey and it starts with one step. So
Yeah.
As long as you're
That's the
committed.
hardest one to take, though.
Yeah, as long as you're committed, and now for me, it really wasn't an option because my background and what I've done with my life and so on and so forth, this area, Central Illinois, it really doesn't have a lot of opportunity, for me. So I looked at it as I've spent my life working for a father who had done things his own way
Mhm.
and had charted his own path. And I realized that I really needed to really try to figure out in the last half of my life. I don't tell people I'm 50. I tell them I'm halfway to 100. I seem to get a little bit more respect that way, but getting things on a path for myself
Yeah.
where I'm able to be more in control of, I don't want to sound cheesy, but my destiny or where what my life is going to look like. And that's why I respect a lot of what you're doing too, Nicole, is because I think you're trying to, show people that same path. And
Yeah.
and in the way what you naming it living free in Tennessee. Well, I think living free is what everyone's goal is. It could be Georgia or it could be North Carolina,
Yes.
but it's easier done in some places than others. And I knew that Illinois wasn't going to be that place. So I needed to get out. And that's kind of what made it easy to take that first step.
Yeah, the funny thing is, in hindsight, I should have named it the Living Free Podcast.
Yeah.
But somebody now already has that. And
Oh, gosh.
it rhymes, right? Living free in Tennessee. Woohoo.
Yeah.
Now people think it's not like relevant to them if they're not in Tennessee, which is totally not.
No, I think the principles
That's my marketing challenge with this whole brand.
Yeah.
It's of my own making.
Yes.
Why did I do that? Okay. So back to the project. So you were looking at this $1 million project and you started taking steps to get it done. So what was the process that you went through to really explore, do I really need $1 million? Where do I want to go? How is this going to look? And how did that journey happen where you morphed from, idea, oops, I fell in love and got married. She might not want to move. So we got to talk about this to what the Liberty Oak Oasis is probably going to be as you move forward. I know it's not built all the way yet.
No, not built out. We definitely have the land. We have some timelines put in place right now. Real exciting from a standpoint of I see this $1 million project. I started doing a lot of research on and through YouTube or whatever, just looking at people who have been putting together tiny houses and glamping tents. It just all of that whole universe just sort of opened up to me. And that sort of put things on pause because then when I saw, oh, well, here's a type of quote unquote dwelling that I could put on the property for people to retreat in. Now I'm running down that company. I'm talking with a representative. I'm finding about what the costs are, what the, all of that. And so then with each iteration of okay, we could start with this and then stage 2 we get to this, and then stage 3 we get to this. I realized that it had to be layered, that we just couldn't go all in and just put everything in place all at once and it'd be perfect and exactly the way that we wanted it. It had to be piece by piece. So that's basically what then kind of altered my scope of who I could talk to, who might be interested in being an investor. But I really had to start with, to give myself credibility. Of course, I had to have kind of a business prospectus. I put together at one point, I think I had like a 15, 16 page, PDF that I sent people, and realized that was probably too much, but then at least they could see that I was serious and I'd done my research. But really what we started with was the idea that if we could start slow and then go through stages, then I started an LLC and then got set up to be able to do business in Tennessee, started, got a bank account, did all of those sorts of things. And then we're able to tell people, look, we're going to have a membership-based LLC where we have members that invest, and then we're going to, in the LLC, show what the 2, 3, 4 year kind of income coming back to them, profit sharing, if you will. And so I spent probably close to 2 years trying to perfect that model and get people interested. And ironically, or not ironically, I don't know whichever you want to take it, I ended up having a lot of stuff lined up through January of last year. And then the Ukrainian war broke out, and it literally just scattered everyone. Everyone became very reluctant of what's going to happen with the economy. And what can I really risk this $20,000 or $30,000 to put behind this, so on and so forth. So that kind of threw everything into neutral for about 12 months until I redoubled my efforts and restarted thinking some things. And what I ended up doing was I ended up deciding that I would partner with one of the types of glamping units that would be able to be on the property, with the idea that we would use those glamping units as sort of a showcase showroom for people to see it. But then the property and them being on the property would almost be like a marketing tool for the company.
Mm-hmm.
So the company that I ended up finding is actually in London, in north of London, in the United Kingdom. They're called Land Pods.
Mm-hmm.
And so right before Christmas, after I contacted them in June of last year, and then we finally had a conference call Zoom meeting in September of last year, that then proceeded to me going to London and then traveling to their manufacturing facility. And now, as it stands right now, we're looking to hopefully here within the next 3 or 4 months, pull these over from the United Kingdom, put them on the property. They're partnering with me. So the only thing I'm paying for is shipping. So then once we get them up on Airbnb, the money that we're making from these first units on the property is 100% profit that then allows me to expand into the second and the third and the fourth piece to build out the property.
Okay, so you basically have taken your big goal and divided it down into phases where how many units are you getting?
We're gonna get 5 of these land pods to begin with.
So 5 land pods. You can operate as a retreat, and when you're not operating as a retreat, you can rent them out on Airbnb and still have some cash flow from that.
Correct.
So that you can use that to do the next phase and the next phase and the next phase.
Correct. And the next phase is probably going to be domes. So I kind of landed on the domes that we can put on decks.
Yeah.
Those are the next most affordable. And then I can also open up the property to there's apps out there called Dirt or Hip Camp. Yeah. And then I can have people come on the property and set up a little half acre for dispersed camping and charge people $35, $40 to just come and pitch a tent. So, there's that income stream as well.
Yeah. So guys, what he's doing is applying the homesteader mindset where you live works for you rather than you work for where you live. And he's finding, this is what I want to do. When I'm not doing that with this thing, this is another way I can generate some revenue. We do that here too, because I do events at my place. Mm-hmm. And as a result, I have composting outhouses. I have an outdoor shower. I have infrastructure for camping. And so then we're on Hip Camp. Mm-hmm. And people can come camp here when there's not an event going on. And, you make 20, 50, 75 bucks here and there. It's extra money. Mm-hmm. And it takes very little effort to do that. I actually turned off my Hip Camp this year because we were doing so much earthworks that it was a mud bog. And I was like, hey, come camp in my mud bog. Wasn't probably the right message. So I turned it off. But so that's really neat.
Can you put the mud in a bath and then you could promote mud baths? Maybe
could totally do like mud wraps or something, an Airbnb experience. I cover you in mud and you wash it off.
And you can sell them the cucumbers too from your garden to put on their eyes.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's definitely. And then the neat thing about this property is that there's 25 acres of open field next to this. The property that we got is 30 acres. It's 90% completely covered with forest. But then it also has a 4-acre pond. So we're also looking to partner. I'm looking also to become the first chapter of an organization called Cross Trail Outfitters, which is father, son, and daughter hunting and fishing. And if I get involved with that organization, then there's going to be people coming onto the property it's going to just expand that much more knowledge of Liberty Oak Oasis for the people that come and hunt and fish on the property. But there's 25 acres next to this parcel that I have that's basically just set up for farmland.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of eyeing and figuring out how I might be able to get that as a way to, set it up for another stream of income.
So once you adjusted your scope of what you were doing and figured out you were going to need to phase it out over time, how did you figure out where to look for land, and how many pieces of land did you look at before you settled on the one that you found? How long did that whole process take, and what went into it?
Probably 3.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
My wife and I basically downloaded the Zillow app onto my phone probably in 2017, and just literally started there's a section there where you can just search, land only, nothing with a house on it or anything like that. Then you can search, does it have water on it? Does it, how many acres? How long? When was it posted? And then so over the course of probably 2018, 2019, 2020, for about 2.5 years there, my wife and I, we went to Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina. We probably did a half a dozen trips over those 3 years, 2.5 to 3 years, and met with realtors, gotten side by sides, trucked out into the the woods, and it was quite a learning experience because being a guy that was raised in Illinois, when you look at stuff on Google Earth, oh, this looks great, so on and so forth. You get down on the ground and you realize this isn't going to work.
Mm-hmm.
There's hills and ravines and difficult getting to the property at that, and not realizing. So the matrix that I sort of came up with as far as finding the property is that if you get too close to a large town, then raw land is kind of more commercial, and then they think Dollar Tree is going to come in and spend $1 million for this 25 acres.
Mm-hmm.
You get too far out in the middle, there's plenty of land way out in the middle of nowhere that's an hour and a half from a town, and it's maybe $300,000 for 25 acres, but there's nothing to do once you get there.
Yeah.
And if you're going to have a retreat space, I mean, I understand people like to get out and get away, but I think I'm smart enough to realize that sitting on a stool next to a tent and looking at trees and birds only lasts so long.
Right.
People want to go do something else. Then the research I was doing with the other people who were putting together these campsites, they said you got to get near a state park. So then you throw that factor in. So those are the things that I went through was to get it close to a town, but not too close to a town. Find some property that had some maybe built-in amenities like a pond or a lake, or at least some good hiking, and then also place it closer to a state park. So, for example, Liberty Oak Oasis is only 8 minutes from the boat launch on Center Hill Lake, where people can then kayak to the base of Burgess Falls.
Right.
And then I've already kind of done a partnership, if you will, with the people who take out 15 people a day. They're going to work with me for the people that visit us. They'll take those people out and give them a day adventure of kayaking and sightseeing and so on and so forth. So, but I think we've got a real good mix with the property that I landed on. The other thing is utilities. If your property is so far away, then is it going to be $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 to put in a road even to get to your place? And then what does water look like? What does electric look like? The property that we have is literally borders a county maintained road where electric and water are right there where we want to start building and developing.
Yeah. So you don't necessarily have to generate that on site.
Correct.
But do you want to?
Eventually.
But do you want to?
My goal. No, I do. No, my goal. My goal. I've already spoken with a guy out of Knoxville. His name's Daniel Roche, and he's with Perfect Water. and he puts in rainwater collection systems.
Yeah.
So part of our long range, not part of our long range plan, part of our initial build out is also this really works, and a lot of people are excited about us being able to make this work because we're not going to be absent landlords. My wife and I are actually building a barn dominium on the property. And so we will be there, we will be living there and managing it on site, as well as eventually from the barn dominium, which will be about 2,500 square foot, we're going to be able to do some rainwater collection that's going to, help get us more off grid. And then of course, we'll look at solar and some other things. I've been talking to the Battleborn battery people about consulting with us.
Yeah. So we have somebody who is in our network, Sean Mills from hackmyhomestead.com.
Okay.
He used to be Hack My Solar, but he renamed. And he is the best solar planning consultant I have ever worked with.
Great.
So he came out here, he audited my property and helped me figure out how to prioritize what to do on a property that's already on grid to have financial benefit of going off grid. So the first thing I did was put a solar water heater in, which is not the first place. We're all like solar panels and battery storage and all that other stuff. And then the second thing I have is a water solution, a water gravity feeding my water to the house because we don't have city water here. And yes, we are putting a solar array in this year. Finally, that's 5 years ago that we started the whole process. So
correct.
So hackmyhomestead.com. If you want an introduction, just let me know because he just did a shared solar panel buy for people in our network in Tennessee, and we collectively bought $15,000 worth of panels.
Oh wow!
But we get those are coming in on pallets, and it's cheaper that way because we're all buying them at one time. So yeah.
The neat part of this property is that there is a very large open area to the east of the pond. That has absolute straight clear sight south. That will be really nice for a solar array from what I can tell. So I'm very excited.
Do you have
about
any moving water there?
I'm so sorry. What now?
Do you have moving water on it?
The pond is a spring fed pond.
Okay.
It actually the pond fills up and then overflows seasonally to the back end, the north end of the pond, and it's named Rum Creek. And Rum Creek goes into Taylor Creek, and then Taylor Creek ends up going over Fancher Falls, which then goes into drains into Center Hill Lake. So
I know where that is.
So it's a very active water area. It's very exciting to be on the property and see see the pond kind of doing what it does.
Yep. So Fancher Falls is one of my favorite kayaking locations to do on Center Hill Lake. It's a great little trip and it's beautiful there.
Yep.
And there are tons of geodes at the bottom of that thing. So if you've been there yet, you should totally go. It's a great
definitely.
Paddle out, have a picnic,
poke
around, and then leave on a hot summer day. So
sure, absolutely. Yeah, I'm definitely I definitely know that a kayak is in the budget for me and the wife. I think it'll be a great way to exercise and stuff. But the pond that we do have is stocked with small and largemouth bass. And there's also duck hunting. There's a 3-room duck blind on the property that's been built. So there's been duck hunting on this pond for going back almost 100 years. So that's another part of it. And so that's an exciting aspect. But one of the things that we want to do is probably put like a floating dock on the pond. So when people visit, then they're able to, go out, fish off the dock and enjoy themselves that way. So again, just another amenity that we're hoping, that people will be able to come and enjoy and just part of the build out process.
Yeah, cool. I have a solar question here I'm saving towards the end. Hey, Alabama, because it's a little bit off topic, but I have a good answer for you later about that. And I'm going to save 30-day reviews question as well. So back to the off-grid thing. When I saw that you wanted me to ask you about going off-grid, which was cool,
Yeah.
I started thinking about zoning and land use planning and codes
Hmm.
and permitting. And this is something that's interesting where you have chosen your land. I
Hmm.
don't know all of your county rules, but I live close to where you're going to go. So
Hmm.
I know what my county rules are like. And where they where they come in and control what you can do on your property has to do with adding power and septic,
Hmm.
right? I don't know if the county you're moving into is that's just it, because that's pretty much just here. Which means if you never have to tap into power or you
Hmm.
never have to add city water, you can do a lot of things here without anybody looking at what your plan is, like putting pods up, for example,
Hmm.
or the domes that you want to build. How did that factor into you choosing a location? And is that at all part of your motivation for doing some of these off-grid projects, or is off-grid more like it just makes sense financially and that's why we're thinking about doing that?
I think long term, from a marketing standpoint, I think people are going to be
So,
impressed
yeah,
with someone who is taking the efforts to do that.
yeah.
So, eh, did I factor it in? Yeah. Um, but then there's also, for me, there's also the cool factor, to be honest with you. It's sort of like the reason why I'm not real excited about ever owning an electric car, but being able to go 0 to 60 in 3.9 seconds is
Yeah.
kind of cool. And so that might be a motivator for me to want to do it. So I guess I don't know if that really answers your question. I
It
do
sort of
know
does.
I do know that when I did my research, that I saw that White County
Hmm.
had they had no inspections other than septic and electric,
Yep. That's
and
how
they had
DeKalb
no
is.
and they have no zoning. So the county
Mhm.
still has no zoning.
And you're
So
going
it
to
doesn't.
help keep it that way, right?
Yeah, yes, oh, absolutely. Now the downside is that I got thrown a curveball about 4 weeks ago, 3 or 4
Yeah.
weeks ago, when I found out that the county commissioner for White County and them decided that they were going to hire a new inspector and they were going to sort of adopt some of the inspection rules of Putnam County
Oh
to the
no.
north up by Cookville.
Yeah, yeah.
So I made some calls and I talked to the main guy who would be my inspector, and he said
Yeah.
that I needed to, if I was going to do this, I was going to do that. I needed to talk to the Tennessee environmental impact,
Yeah.
razzie, whatever people,
Razzle frazzle.
and then going forward, also, I needed to talk to the planning commission. And the best news that I can say from all of those calls was it was humorous to get the planning commission guy on the phone, and I told him that such and such guy told me to call him, and I was going to be putting up some domes and some non-permanent structures and this, that, and the other. And I could hear him scoff and was like, "Oh my God, why is this guy telling people to call me?" He's like, "If you aren't going to be encroaching on somebody else's property, then I don't care
I
what
don't
you do."
care. Yeah.
So that was good news.
You're
And
like,
so I
great,
think,
we need to go for a beer.
yeah, exactly. So I told him, but I honestly think that, I was an elected county board member, for
Yeah.
4 years up here in Illinois. It was a swing district. So when the Republican governor won, then I became county board member. And when the Democrat was elected, I wasn't a county board
Hmm.
member. It's pretty
Hmm.
much how it worked. But the point on that is that I think that, one of the nice things with my background in politics and knowing how to hopefully talk with folks like that I'm going to have the minimal amount of problems possible. And so I decided to only kind of look at the temporary electric and the water, because literally where we want to build our barnuminium, where the electric and the water is I'm talking like 20 feet.
Oh, nice.
It's
Bury it.
it's it's
Bury it if you
literally.
can, by the way.
I
That's my
mean,
that's my advice for everybody. Bury it.
yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So hopefully, once we kind of get the barnuminium set up,
Yeah.
and then we can figure out how to put the things in place that can allow us to unhook in the future.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at on that. And then by that time, we have that infrastructure in place to then power the domes and take care of the water needs of the other pieces as we build forward. And then that will help us dodge maybe any sort of bump ins with regulations and stuff.
Yeah, we get an impressive amount of water that just falls out of the sky in Tennessee.
Yep.
And you can do a lot with that, just in land contour and collecting what falls or not, depending on how much falls. But it's, to me, that was very, because I was in Oregon for 33 years before I moved here. And it was very different scene there in that regard. So
well, and we have the 4-acre pond. And so I'm actually doing a little research on figuring out, in stage 3 or 4, if we're having maybe some cabins built along the, pond side, does it make sense to figure out how to do a reverse osmosis, such and such, whatever that looks like, to basically just filter the pond water, because we know that it's and people, I'm going to get in a kayak and find out for sure, or a canoe or whatever, but I think the center depth of that pond is close to 15 to 20 foot deep. So
nice.
I don't think running something out there to pull water from that sort of depth and filtering it for people on the property is going to be a problem.
Yeah, back to the off-grid thing, it's one of those, so a loophole is a legal thing, guys. We use the word loophole. People have negative responses to that. As an agorist, I look for the ways that I can pay the least taxes possible and do what I want to do without having a big risk of going to Club Fed. And being off grid where I am, but not everywhere. So this is something you need to look at in your specific county, because this isn't even state specific, but in your local area, plus your state, all of it, and your city, if you're in a city, that can open up avenues of alternative dwelling options that are more suited to what you want, or a starter. Like, it could be something that's affordable now and you're going to do something else later. And it is getting easier and easier and easier to be off grid and be comfortable. And that's what I think is really cool. Like, panels are coming down in price. Battery storage is coming down in price. There are more plug and play options for solar arrays. Solar is not the only option. There's water generation. There's wind generation. There's all sorts of stuff. And you can have a backup plan with a switch to charge off with a generator if you need to. If you have a battery storage system. So there's so many cool things there.
Absolutely.
So we have a question from the audience that is pertinent to where we are right now. Are barn dominiums still less expensive than a standard house to build?
Question for me, obviously.
Yes.
Right now, I'm working with a local developer, local architect guy. I hand drew up the plans. I went online and found some company that could let you make it look 3D. So I kind of just stole that tool from them and then sent the link to the guy, so on and so forth. Right now, he's giving. I'm trying to think of the measurements right now. I think we're at 45 by 60.
Yeah.
45 wide, 60 long, with a second floor kind of apartment that my wife and I would live. But then the whole first floor will actually be used for Liberty Oak Oasis. So you mentioned space at your place, Nicole. We would do the same thing. Small one-day business retreats, or a small wedding, or something like that. A church group comes out and just wants to have a picnic on the property, or something like that. We can rent out the whole first floor of the building, and it'll have a commercial kitchen, so on and so forth. So with that said, the long answer, I guess, is I'm looking at that being put on the concrete pad, putting in the
barn dominium.
Those pipes that you need for water.
Those things,
those having all that
important.
In. Sorry, my brain. So having all of that, and then the shell of the building, I'm getting a quote of about $90,000.
Okay. Yeah,
and then the inside is nothing more than maybe 15 or 20 interior walls,
Yeah.
And then insulation, and then obviously electric and the finishing out the kitchen and stuff. So we're thinking, a 2,500 square foot building in Cookeville, or a 2,500 square foot home in Cookeville is pushing $200,000 all day long, and I don't think that we're gonna put $100,000 into the inside of finishing it out ours. So
remind me to make a connection for you with an electrician from our network who lives in Sparta.
Absolutely.
You need to meet him. He does great work. He does work for me all the time.
That's awesome. Yeah. The power of networking.
Barndo prices completely depends on the area. Ours would be more expensive because the government here is crap. So she's up against a regulatory problem.
Sure, right? Sure. Yeah, understand. Yeah, completely. Yeah, because the way that they're constructed, post frame or this or what you're doing with your foundations and so on. Yeah, I definitely can see that.
Yeah, it can go up or down.
Well, a lot of these professional companies too. Yeah. What you have to understand, a lot of these professional companies, they see the barndominium bandwagon, and 5 years ago you were having companies say, yeah, we can do that for $175 a square foot, and now it's $350 a square foot. And that isn't all, inflation and the economy and Joe Biden and all that other sort of stuff.
No, I think the market for building is saturated. Like my experience in Tennessee is things are more expensive. The further from a city they are because you're more of a pain in the rear. Yep. That's more expensive. And then some of the supplies like going through the roof has definitely impacted it. Because I talked about, I want a cement slab out here under Taj Mahal, and the bid came in $2,500 less than I thought it would be at $8,500. And that's just because a friend gave me a nice bid. But the majority of that cost is just buying the material. And so if the material does one of those, that's when I want to pay the guys to do the work.
Sure, absolutely.
And then I'm that person. I'm like, I don't care when you do it. Just come do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there was another
canceled on you. Yes, I'll give you money.
There was another location that I was looking at and was really stuck on, and it was in Bledsoe County near Pikeville.
Yeah,
and it just got way too unreasonable talking to people from anywhere. It's just like no one wants to go to Bledsoe County. Basically is what it comes down to. And it was too far out of the way for people to want to mess with it.
Well, since you already said which county you were in, I wasn't sure if you were top secret about your location. Yeah, being near Sparta is great because there's there is a renaissance of homesteading happening in our immediate area. And there is an art layer to it, and there is a foodie network layer, and then there's really great recreation here. So in the last 10 months, I have seen a lot of changes to Sparta, Smithville, Cookeville, all of that. Smithville a little less so, but it's coming to Smithville too. There's already I'm starting to see the rent prices are too high complaints happen, which is what happens when people who come from out of the area and have some affluence come into the area. That's very true. Very true. Yeah. We just want to put together a nice location where, we can kind of, develop it over the next 3 or 4 years. And then, we'll probably want to, knowing me, I'll want to do it again. Yeah. So, and it'll probably be a lot easier the second time around. I've learned a lot, and I don't think that there's a property north of Cookeville up by Cummings Falls. Yeah.
But the problem is that there needs to be a bridge built across the river to get to the property. But once that happens, it would be great. So, but nonetheless, was there another question that from the studio audience?
There will be, but not yet. I have one for you instead. So what are the most important things you've learned as part of this process?
I had a friend that I went to college with, and he wanted to be an international wine importer. And move out to the East Coast and set up an international wine importing business and so on and so forth. And he was probably the second person that I called about this. And he flat out warned me, because I'm a type A kind of go-getter. I'm a type 8 on the Enneagram. I'm an ENTJ, extroverted, intuitive, hard charging kind of person. Rev's pretty high. And so he warned me because he knew my personality. He's like, Mark, this is going to take a while. He's like, just get ready for it to take a while. Mm-hmm. So what I've learned is that if you really want something, you just have to understand that there's going to be dips and turns and setbacks and so on, and that you can't get frustrated. You just have to decide, I'm just going to have to find a way around this. What's my next best way? And what I found is that for me, at least, when I talk problems out, I tend to come up with solutions.
Yeah.
So I've, again, having a network of people to talk with, I've learned is, and I already kind of knew that as someone who'd, been a person that was trying to promote himself as a political consultant 25 years ago. Right. I knew that there needed to be you need a network of people around you, but for this, you definitely do. And then I would also say that, you just keep things prioritized, and not worry about something that might need to be taken care of 6 months. It's on your timeline, but that's 6 months from now. Yeah. Just keep what is priority in front of you, and then work on that, and then just worry about crossing those other bridges later. And as much as I am the way that I am, opposites attract, and so my wonderful wife is the exact opposite. Those conversations had to happen about 150 times in the last 3 years, with my wife, telling her, I understand your concerns about that. We can't worry about that right now. I know because you just become overwhelmed, and then you have analysis paralysis.
Yeah, and analysis paralysis is not good. That's actually, so I don't know if you know this. I have a planning method called My 3 Things. Mm-hmm. And oddly enough, I have a free webinar about it, folks. If you're hearing what he's saying and need to start learning how to make your priorities and focus on those and not worry about the other stuff.
Actually, I'm going to give you a big prop here, Nicole.
Yeah.
I saw you putting the 3 things on Facebook about 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And that kind of hit me on the
you're like,
the frontal cortex of, well, gosh, that does make sense. And I've incorporated that thinking subconsciously since I saw you posting about that 2 or 3 years ago.
Yep. So guys, sign up February 26th, free webinar, livingfreeintennessee.com. And if you can't attend in person, yes, it's being recorded and you can watch the videos. It's funny because I've, when I was doing that, then it's basically a method I developed to trick myself into focusing on what I need to work on. Because I'm really good at squirrel. I'm like, wait, it's 5 o'clock. What did I do today? Yeah. Nothing. Oh,
yes,
crap.
Nothing. Yes.
I saw a lot of squirrels today, right? So,
yeah, absolutely. So, we're just really excited. I think that the catalyst with these land pods coming onto the property, and
that's awesome.
That's gonna turn the the cash flow machine on. Hopefully, my dad had a bumper sticker in his office at our grocery store, and the bumper sticker said, "Happiness is positive cash flow."
I agree.
So if anyone's looking for a definition of happiness today, then
that's your definition.
That's pretty close.
Yeah,
it's pretty close. It's not everything, but it sure gets you a long way there.
What's your next step for Liberty Oak Oasis?
Well, we're going to be having the grading machines and some forestry mulcher machines on the property February 20th.
Okay.
And then if anyone wants to head over to Liberty Oak Oasis YouTube page, the last video that I posted talks about how I was already going to be coming down that weekend
Yeah.
But then some interesting twists and turns of things I found on the internet had me discover why I needed to actually be a mile from our property, which is a wedding venue. It's called Duck Pond Manor.
Oh, I know where Duck Pond is.
I found out that well, you just have to watch the video. I don't want to ruin it.
That's so funny.
It's just too good. It's just too good. The way I tell it in the video is better than I could tell it here. And so if you're interested, yeah, definitely check out that YouTube video. But that I'm going to be back down, and then I'm going to be networking with with some people that are going to help us with the land pods, because the land pods are going to come over about 80% finished, but then there's wood that needs to be placed in them to put them together. So I've got some meetings on that, and then I'm going to this event at Duck Pond Manor, and then hopefully the following Monday on the 20th is when they're going to be on the property, and then we're going to be videoing all of the work that they're going to start to do in shaping the property, making it easier to hike and get around, and where we're going to put some of the first glamping tents is going to be on the south end of the pond, and once that, we'll have that up on our YouTube channel as well for people to watch all of that as soon as we can get it edited and put together.
For those on the audio podcast, I will have the links in the show notes, but it is at Liberty Oak Oasis on YouTube, which is super easy to remember. So I'm saying that verbally too.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, if people want to get involved, how's the best way for them to contact you or follow the journey?
They can message me through we're on Facebook, Liberty Oak Oasis. You can follow us on Facebook. My email for the business is libertyoakoasis@gmail.com. That's and then they can send out a message to me. Again, we want to work with veterans. We want to work with ministry leaders. We're going to be working with dads and daughters and sons through the Cross Trail Outfitters in the future. And so that's going to take people who want to volunteer and maybe have a heart for that sort of stuff, but be able to come to the property and help do that sort of programming. And then, definitely interested in anyone who wants to, in your network, that would like to come and disperse camp on the property. If you email me and we can set up a time and date and all of that, I'd be more than happy to let people start coming out to the property and disperse camp on the property.
Awesome, guys. So that'll all be in the show notes. Mark, I want to thank you for coming on. Do hang on after we say goodbye, because we're going to take a couple of questions that are a little off topic. So thanks for being on.
Yeah, absolutely. So much fun, Nicole. Thanks for having me.
That's my 5-second pause so I can edit that in my audio. All right. So 30-Day Reviews wants to know, why domes instead of yurts?
I haven't decided. Yurts don't have the ability to allow you to feel immersed in nature. Domes have 8, 9, 10 foot of windows that come up one side, or you can put a skylight in one, and so on and so forth. So for me, the idea of someone coming and staying, obviously I'm not even sure. I haven't even priced out yurts. So I don't know if they're comparable in pricing. I do know that yurts need to have that interior structure, along the inside. And I have heard that that's separate from, you have to source that and do that and have someone who knows how to do that. Whereas when you get a dome, you have all of the pieces that you put together, that you put in the canvas dome structure over the top of. All of that comes as one package.
Right.
And so for me, the idea of having the visual outside, being able to look, the visual for looking outside for the people visiting, and then the how you're sourcing your material and putting it together, just seems like a dome is a lot more convenient to put together, and is a little bit more marketable, I think, in my opinion.
Cool. You know, it's funny. So it's not the kind of dome you're talking about, but I have a friend who did a dome out of Quickcrete.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And because we're in Tornado Alley, tornadoes don't destroy them.
Sure.
When they're made that way. And he said he doesn't have to live up to any codes. He doesn't have to finance the place.
Mm-hmm.
It's very well insulated how he did it, and
Yeah.
it was a really interesting thing. And then he could make it any, do anything
Sure.
you want. Windows wherever you want.
I've actually watched a lot of those HGTV building off-grid shows and stuff, and so I actually saw someone do that. I think they did it out near Phoenix, or they did it out in the desert, and they were really happy with.
Oh yeah, it stays
with
really
how it
cool.
turned out.
Yeah. Cool / warm. Okay, so this is the last question I have up, and that's: do you have to turn your solar off if the local utilities cut power? That's what local solar companies said we would have to do. It defeats the reason for putting it in. I know the answer to this. I didn't know if you had something to say there first, Mark.
I've not heard anything either way. To be honest, it seems implausible, but do you know something different?
I do. If you grid tie your solar system, which means you're pumping power back into the power grid,
that makes sense.
There is no way around. You're going to have that has to automatically basically be shut off.
Yeah.
If they are doing something with the power, because if you're backfeeding electricity and there's a lineman fixing the line, he can get killed by your solar panel.
Yeah.
So if you want to avoid that, and again, if you're in somewhere with a lot of codes, I'm sorry, because you may not be able to do this. The reason I made the decision here to put a battery bank on the other side of where my power comes in, and then have a switch where I can charge it with panels, I can charge it with the generator, or charge it with power, and then from there it goes to things that are powered. The reason I did that is I'm not feeding back into these systems. So it's like there's a hard stop, and then there's battery bank, and then I charge those batteries 3 ways, because I want the resilience over the financial gain of selling power back into the system. So it depends on 2 things. Depends on the decision you make, and then every location is going to have something different. 30 days says.
I've heard that the money that you make sending back is not really that great, but maybe I could be wrong as well. Seems like it'd be more hassle than
it just depends
than help. But maybe like you said, it depends.
It depends. I mean, I have a friend who put a solar array in, and she's making tons of money, but she did it like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So my power in this area, they don't even have a way for me to do that anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Sure, that doesn't surprise me.
So everybody's liking the dome. So I really like the shotcrete domes. Tornadoes have me feeling a hair sensitive about structural integrity. Yeah, I live in a bunker, so I'm good. I have a tunnel. I'll go to the tunnel if I have to go to the tunnel. But yeah. Anyway, well, those were the questions we had. Thanks for making time. I expect the audio podcast will be out Sunday. So.
Sure, that sounds great. Well, thank you for your time.
That was awesome. Okay, that's about all we've got for you right now, Liberty family. But coming up next week, we're going to have video of the property out at Liberty Oak Oasis, so you won't want to miss it. And I'll see y'all next week.